The Namibian savannah unfurls beneath a searing sky, a timeless expanse of golden grass and ancient acacias trembling in the heat. This is a land of raw, untamed beauty, where lions stalk the shadows and silence holds a sacred weight. But on February 27th, 2021, that silence was shattered by a single gunshot, a sound that unleashed a storm of sex, power, and betrayal, its truth still buried in the dust of this unforgiving wilderness. Harvey Boulter, a British billionaire, had carved out a sanctuary here. Kaross Estate, a 66,000-acre expanse in the Outjo district nestled between Kamanjab and Etosha National Park. It was his escape, a kingdom far from the world's scrutiny. But behind the gates of Kaross, a drunken barbecue turned deadly. A man was shot, and a tangled web of accusation began to spin, ensnaring everyone in its threads. Harvey Eric Boulter, born in November 1969, wasn't always a name tied to scandal. Before the whispers of murder, he was a titan in global finance and tech, a billionaire whose empire spanned continents. From his early days in Hong Kong, managing properties like the William IV Street Management Company, to leading tech ventures such as Alaska Food Diagnostics and Smart Holograms, Boulter's ambition was boundless. He founded AK Applied in the UK, operated out of Dubai's Business Bay, and held directorships in companies like Through Vision Group and Cellcrypt Limited until 2022. His influence reached the elite. He'd been photographed with Bill and Hillary Clinton. And in 2011, he made headlines as the whistleblower who triggered a UK cabinet resignation, a man who played hard and won harder. But power came with enemies, and by 2019, a bitter divorce from his wife, Leonora, left him seeking a new start. That new start was Kaross Estate on farm Kaross 237, along Opuo Road in Namibia, a sprawling game farm he purchased in 2012. There, surrounded by the untamed savannah, Boulter sought to rebuild, overseeing a small staff that included the Van Wyk family. Gerhard Van Wyk Sr., the 54-year-old property manager, his son, Gerhard Jr., and Jr.'s wife, Leanne. It was meant to be a fresh chapter, until a single night turned his sanctuary into a crime scene, and the man who once brokered million-dollar deals found himself facing a murder charge. February 27th, 2021, began like any other day at Kaross Estate, but by evening, a traditional Namibian braai had gathered the staff under a starlit sky. The fire crackled, casting shadows on the faces of those present. Harvey Boulter, his friend Adam, Gerhard Van Wyk Sr., his wife Alta, their son Gerhard Jr., and Jr.'s wife, Leanne. The Van Wyks all lived on Boulter's farm, their lives intertwined with the estate. But the warmth of the fire couldn't mask the tension that erupted when Boulter, 51 and described as very drunk, made a chilling remark. Boulter had recently agreed to let Gerhard Jr. and Leanne build a home on his land, a generous offer in a region where property was scarce. But as the whiskey flowed, he leaned in and allegedly said Leanne would have to have sex with him every other night to repay the favor. The words ignited a firestorm. Gerhard Jr. exploded in anger, shouting at Boulter, while Leanne stood frozen, caught between fear and fury. The argument escalated, and Boulter pulled out a 9mm semi-automatic pistol he reportedly wore in a shoulder holster at all times. Gerhard Sr. stepped in, trying to calm the chaos, but as he wrestled the gun from Boulter's hands, a shot rang out. The bullet pierced Boulter's left hand and struck Gerhard Sr. in the abdomen. He collapsed, blood soaking the dirt of the estate he had dedicated his life to, his family's screams echoing into the night. The gunshot unleashed pandemonium. Alta Van Wyck fell to her knees beside her husband, her hands trembling as she tried to stem the bleeding. Gerhard Jr. and Leanne helped lift him into their battered Land Cruiser, the only vehicle available for the 100-mile journey to Aljo State Hospital. The drive was a nightmare, rutted tracks winding through the wilderness, often crossed by wildlife that loomed in the headlights. Inside the car, Alta cradled Gerhard Sr.'s head, her sobs mingling with desperate prayers. Gerhard Jr. drove with a clenched jaw, while Leanne sat in stunned silence, the weight of the night suffocating them all. 18 miles into the journey, Gerhard Sr.'s breathing stopped, his body going still just miles from the hospital that might have saved him. Alta's cries filled the car, a raw sound of grief that echoed the shattering of their world. With no hope left, they turned back to Kaross, returning to the scene of the tragedy with a loss that would haunt them forever. On March 17, 2021, Gerhard Sr. was laid to rest in Aljo at the Dutch Reformed Kerk, a service that drew mourners from across Namibia and South Africa, a testament to the man he was. As dawn broke over Kaross, the police arrived, led by Kunena Crime Investigation Coordinator Deputy Commissioner Rudolph Kenyidu. Boulter, nursing a wounded hand, claimed self-defense, saying Gerhard Sr. and Jr. attacked him during the scuffle. He recounted taking out his pistol, placing it against his chest as a warning, but the gun discharged during the struggle, piercing his hand and striking Gerhard Sr., but the Van Wyck's accounts of the lewd comment, the aggression, the fatal shot, painted a darker picture. Boulter was arrested, charged with murder, possession of a firearm without a license, and handling a firearm while intoxicated. He spent 141 days under police guard, initially in a private hospital in Windhoek for his hand injury, before being granted bail in July 2021. Friends of the Van Wycks whispered that Boulter's influence, his rumored ties to Namibian officials like former Minister of Defense Erkki Ngimtana, meant he was being treated with kid gloves, fueling fears he might escape justice. Gerhard Van Wyck Sr. was more than a victim in this tragedy. He was a man whose life was woven into the fabric of Namibia's rugged north. At 54, he was a burly, bearded figure known as a gentle giant among friends, a man who had faced death many times yet met it in the most unexpected way. Born in South Africa, Gerhard Sr. was a young soldier during the Angolan Bush War, fighting Soviet-backed guerrillas in the apartheid-era South African Army from 1966 to 1990. He survived ambushes and firefights, a testament to his resilience, only to settle in Namibia as a game ranger and park manager. For years, he worked at Etosha National Park, earning a reputation as a special kind of ranger. He was a noted horseman, famous for his skills in the saddle, and faced down poachers armed with assault rifles and charging elephants with a calm that became legend. In 2013, he joined Kaross Estate as its manager, a role he took on through connections with Boulter's then-wife, Leonora. Gerhard laughed at the title estate manager, preferring the humility of game ranger. But under his stewardship, Kaross became a game paradise, a sanctuary for wildlife in the wild west of Namibia. Gerhard Sr. was a devoted family man, fiercely loyal to his wife, Alta, and their children, Gerhard Jr. and Michelle. He welcomed Leanne as a daughter when she married Jr., dreaming of a future where his family could thrive on the estate. Pastor Lucas Kutzer, who knew him for 30 years, described him as non-aggressive, a man totally devoted to serving Boulter and the land. His death left Alta in a hell of a state. Having watched him die in her arms, their life's work at Kaross stripped away in an instant. The case took a bewildering turn when Harvey Boulter was granted 500,000 Namibian dollars bail, a decision supported by Alta Van Wyck. the widow of the deceased manager, Gerhard Van Wyck Sr., and her family, who feared financial ruin if Boulter remained in custody. Alta, who had spent years as co-manager of Kaross alongside her husband, had watched her world collapse that February night, her grief now entangled with a legal battle that would test her credibility. But whispers of ulterior motives soon emerged. Alta allegedly demanded 55 million Namibian dollars from Boulter through a South African law firm to alter her statement, claiming he pointed the gun at Gerhard Sr.'s head, a detail suggesting intent. Yet, during a court break, witnesses, including psychologist Shireen Glenspire and former Deputy Minister Engelbrecht Nawadiseb, overheard Alta admit this was a lie, expressing shock at the false representation in her statement and vowing to correct it. Alta later denied offering to retract her statement for payment, but Boulter filed charges of extortion and defeating the ends of justice against her. The Van Wyck's initial 84.5 million Namibian dollars lawsuit against Boulter and his company, SX Investments, won, accused him of intentionally or negligently causing Gerhard Sr.'s death, claiming they lost their livelihoods. Alta and Gerhard Jr. had earned 27,500 Namibian dollars and 15,500 Namibian dollars monthly, respectively, while Leanne earned 10,000 Namibian dollars. But the family's actions began to raise more questions than answers, their pursuit of justice increasingly shadowed by suspicion. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. We dive into cases where the truth hides in plain sight, and where every detail reveals a deeper story. Thank you for watching.